want to ask the question, how easy is it to attain God? Who thinks it easy? Medium? Hard? Okay. Among thousands of men, scarcely one strives for perfection, or women, of course, because they're talking between men. So 1,000 men, scarcely one strives for perfection, and of those who strive and succeed, scarcely one knows me in truth. So Shri Krishna is telling this to Arjun. In this verse, Shri Krishna reveals one of his sorrows, and even God has sorrows. You may say that Shri Krishna is a form of Anand bliss, and that even God has his own sorrows. Because of the difficulties in this path of yoga, people began thinking that God is very hard to attain. The majority of people think that they cannot attain God. On one hand, we have Yajnavalkya's words in the Bridhanyaka Upanishad that says, Atma vareta shvava shrutavo mantavya nidatvaya, meaning one should observe the soul, one should hear about the soul, and one should think about the soul, and then they'll make the soul steady in themselves, in their heart. We hear about things like this. On the other hand, a human being says that observing the soul, observing God, and experiencing the Supreme Soul is not his cup of tea. Why do we tie ourselves up with these limitations? Ask a person, and they say that they enjoy listening about the Supreme Soul, enjoy listening about the soul, but when one asks them whether they wish to observe God, then they say that they do not have a right to this. Every human being ties themselves up with these limitations. A person has created this net around her. He has tied themselves up with these limitations. And this is the biggest accident that a human being can make. Every person thinks that God is very difficult to attain. And that's why in the majority of commentaries on the Gita, you see on the Gita, you will see that these commentaries on this verse will say that God is very difficult to attain. In this verse, Shri Krishna talks about one person in 1,000. You see that the word Siddhya is used, last word in the second line. By word Siddhi, Shri Krishna means one who is successful in attaining God's form, but not one who has acquired the Siddhis, the spiritual powers, for example, the ability to make themselves bigger or smaller. This is Siddhi, to attain the form of God. And Shri Krishna says, out of 1,000 people, only one strives for perfection, and out of those who strive and succeed, scarcely one knows him in truth. A lot of people do not understand what Shri Krishna means when he says, out of those who strive and succeed. They ask why one should need to make efforts after he has succeeded, because if someone succeeds, then this should mean that they've attained and reached the destination. In Sanskrit, out of the Nyayas, who knows what Nyayas are? The philosophical texts. There is a very nice Shati Sutra Nyaya, which says that the material used to make a sari, the dress, is counted as part of that dress, as part of the sari. In the same way, Shri Krishna is so kind that he describes a person who is making efforts in order to succeed and preparations to attain yoga. He says that this person is making efforts to attain the successful state. That very person is successful just by making efforts. If someone has begun making efforts and preparations to attain yoga, then this will mean that they will attain that state. But out of these successful people, only one knows God in truth. What people did is interpret this to mean that God is very hard to attain, and they thought that this meant that 1 out of 1,000 people only makes efforts to attain yoga, and out of 1,000 people that make efforts to attain yoga, only one knows God in truth. People therefore thought that attaining God is very hard because only one person can know God in truth. This is the meaning given by ordinary people. It is my humble sadness that God's sorrow is expressed in this verse. This verse does not show that God is difficult to attain. God is saying that he is not hard at all, but there are very few people from human beings that have reached this state. Therefore, Shri Krishna is saying here that it is not that difficult to attain God, but there are few people making efforts to attain God. If one begins to make efforts, then God is not difficult to attain, but very few people are beginning to make efforts. Let's say, for example, there is a dark room, and it's a new room where we're going there for the first time. It's difficult for us to light a light in the room. This is because we do not know whether there is a bulb or not. Even if there is a bulb, we do not know where a switch is. We do not know if there's a bulb or if there's electricity. We do not even know where the drawer is. If we're on holiday and staying overnight at a hotel and the light goes off, then we would not have known before that light would go off. Therefore, you go to find the telephone, and then when you find it, you try to look for where the 9 digit is. Then you telephone reception to try and solve the problem. What if reception say that they keep the light bulb in the drawers because the light bulbs always go there? Then you start looking for the drawer. In one drawer you'll find a lamp, in the second drawer you'll find matches. It takes so much time to do all of this. If it was our own house, then how quickly would all of this be done? It is very easy to light a light, but the efforts to reach the light bulb looks difficult to the person. As soon as one finger reaches the electricity switch, the lighting the light is not hard, but the finger has to reach there first. The majority of people are such that they do not make efforts to find that switch. If it is dark, then they will say that doesn't matter because they just want to go to sleep. How can such a person attain the goal? The majority of people are like this. God says that it's very easy to light the light and all the arrangements are there. However, there's very few people who have a wish, the persistence and the efforts to achieve the light. And that's what we have to understand for this verse. You look here, the first word used in this verse is manushya. What does manushya mean? Go on? Human beings, exactly. What does Shri Krishna mean by human beings? Does anyone know what the definition of human beings is? What is a human being? Okay, Shri Krishna has defined human beings many times in the Gita. A person with just 2 feet and 2 hands isn't a human being. It says in our scriptures, Ahara nida bayamaitunancha samanyaneta pashupina nanam. Even a crow has 2 legs, even a crow sleeps, even a crow eats, and even a crow reproduces. Therefore, it's not right to say that someone who has 2 feet is a human being. Who is a human being? Shri Krishna says in the 11th verse of the 4th chapter of the Gita that Vama Vadmar Vadbante Manushya Partha Sarvasha. One who walks on my path, I call him a human being. What is God's path? There are 2 things about God that we should understand. First of all, God loves universally. God loves the whole world. Secondly, God keeps relationships without expectation. This lack of selfishness and expectation is God's greatest quality. One who can do these 2 things and one who has applied these things into their life is a human being. Do we ever do something that is not out of our selfish will? Do we ever do something that is without expectations? Have we loved a person, object, relationship, circumstance, thought or scripture so much that we do not want anything from it and we just want to give something to these without giving anything in return? Is there such a person, object, relationship, circumstance, thought or scripture in our lives? If we do have, then we can be called a part of God. God does say that we're his parts, but if we do these things, then we have become true parts of God. This is because parts always have the quality of the thing that they came from. Whether those qualities show or not is another thing. The qualities are there. We have these qualities in ourselves because we're parts of God. Have we shown these qualities? If a father says to his son that his son is his, but the son is not ready to accept this, and says that he does not belong to his father, and that he won't do anything for his father, then the feelings of the father do not go anywhere. But the behavior of the son does not show the qualities he has belonging to his father. In the same way, God is telling us here that the first quality of a human being is one who walks on the path of the Supreme Soul. One who shows God's qualities is a human being. Our scriptures have given us another definition of a human being, is Manasa Karmani Sivati Iti Manushya. And remember from earlier classes what this is? Means a person who sows actions with his mind, or someone that thinks before acting is a human being. Basically, when we're doing sewing, I haven't done it since primary school, when you're doing sewing, you have to be so careful that if you make a mistake, you can't retrieve that mistake, it's done. In the same way, a person who sows actions with his mind, or someone that thinks before acting as carefully, is a human being. There's also another definition of a human being, Manuratatte Manushya, meaning one who has feelings like Manu Bhagwan. Anyone know who Manu Bhagwan is? Human beings are descendants of Manu. The word so is used to show the person who has performed actions methodically. Such a person is a human being. When you're sewing, then you have to sew each knot so methodically that if you sew even one wrong, then the whole design pattern gets spoilt. And if there's one spot not in the design, then people know straight away that there's a mistake when they see it. In the same way, a human being is someone that does not even do one wrong action. When he performs actions, he sees whether it is a right action or not. His whole set of karmas is like a design pattern. Therefore, the first thing to remember is that a human being is someone who has kept his whole life's pattern in his mind and knows what he wants to do in life. This pattern is decided and the goal is decided, and one who sows his karmas according to this pattern and the goal in his mind with thought and concentration is a human being. Some people just wake up in the morning and do what they think like and do not worry about tomorrow until later. Such a person is not a human being. This is what a crow does. Shri Krishna says that human beings look for this thing that God has kept hidden, but not all human beings, only 1 in 1,000. We may have 2 feet, but are we doing good deeds that show God's qualities? Do we sow actions and karmas in our minds? Do we have pride that we're descendants of Manu Bhagwan? If so, then we're human beings. If we do this, then we achieve a big chunk on that path. So, out of the thousands of people that are human beings by the definition above, only one strives for perfection and to attain God. It should not be like this, ideally speaking, because if human beings have come from the Supreme Soul, then the first question that human beings should have is, what's the first question we should have in our minds? Where have I come from? To whom do I belong to? And why have I come? These are the first questions that a human being should ask, and it is our first and foremost duty to search from that from which we have come. Not only that, while one is not searching for this, then there should be turbulence in their minds. One should feel restless. One should not be satisfied until one is searching for the Supreme Soul. But this does not happen. What is the reason for this? The biggest wonder that philosophers have is, why does a human being not go towards the Supreme Soul from which the human being came from? Philosophers give 3 reasons for this. The first is desire for material enjoyments, the second is desire for possessions, and the third is ignorance. Desire for material enjoyments, desire for possessions, and ignorance. What is the desire for material enjoyments? It's the nature of human beings. If I were to say it in simple language, then human beings always think small. You, me, and we all fall within this. Human beings get greedy about enjoying that which is close to them and that which gives them instant pleasure. What happens is that the pleasures of the material world are endearing and attractive at the beginning. It is the nature of human beings to enjoy what they want to enjoy today. They wish to enjoy these pleasures as soon as possible. That is what all the pleasures of the material world are like. They're all endearing at the beginning. A human being becomes greedy about enjoying them. Then what happens is that which is close to be found instantly, and the human being remains enjoying these and postpones the search for the supreme truth. On the other hand, the pleasure of God is like poison at the beginning and like nectar at the end. As Shri Krishna will say in the 37th verse of the 18th chapter of the Gita, Yattadagre shamiva praniname murtopanam. Such is the pleasure of God. If you wish to perform penances and walk on the path of God, then you encounter many difficulties. If you normally wake up at 8 a.m. in the morning and now wish to perform penances, then you have to wake up 1 hour earlier. It is very burdening. One feels the sorrow, and that is why people give up. In this example, on the 4th day, the person might go to the last show at the cinema at night and come back at 1 a.m. and go to bed after eating. As a result, he wakes up at 9 a.m. rather than 7 a.m. when he should have, and therefore falls back on his penances. These are the difficulties at the beginning. But once one forms a habit on the path of God, and one gets used to this, then one cannot go without it. But before one forms a habit of it, a person just gives up because it takes efforts to turn it into a habit. If I talk about business language, then when gestation is happening, then something in the material world becomes so attractive that one immediately just gives up this path. The relationship we have with God gets divorced in the honeymoon period. This is the difficulty. The honeymoon period was there so that the two could understand each other and do things together, because when you live with a person for 24 hours, then you realize in reality what that person is like. Otherwise, when you used to go for a drive for 2 hours each evening in the car, it's really fun. But during the honeymoon period, one finds out and one learns that they have to adjust because they made a decision that they're going to live together. That is why they got married. This is what happens. I have heard of 2 or 3 cases where the couple went on holiday for a 3-day honeymoon, and the 4th day they came back and applied for a divorce at the court. People criticize this, but do not do so because this happens between everyone and God. Desire for material enjoyments is the first thing that takes people off the path of God. That is why where 999 out of 1,000 people get halted on the path. God says that out of 1,000 people, only one strives for perfection, but God is being very lenient here. If one person in 1,000 strives for perfection, then the world would be a very different place. Swami Vivekananda said the famous quote, "Give me 100 men with a willpower of steel and I will change the world." How many people are there living in the world? If you take 1,000 of the world population, and if all of these in this faction strive for perfection, then the world at least would not be what it is like today. Second, the desire for possessions makes people wander away from the path of God. Desire for possessions. What is the root of possessions? Anyone? It is the second nature of humans that they have the wish over and over again to enjoy the pleasure which they've enjoyed once and which their senses have liked once. And to make sure that they get this pleasure whenever they want, human beings try to keep the thing from which they get these pleasures. And this is the root of possessiveness. Let us say that a person enjoys eating tasty food at a hotel. He only gets to have this tasty food when he goes to the hotel and gives them money. Therefore, he tries to collect as much money as possible so he could eat at the hotel whenever he likes. That is why he collects all this money. This is the root of the state of possessiveness, and this applies to every possession. Thirdly, ignorance makes people go far away from the path of God. What is this ignorance? Anyone know? It is that the human being is so endeared by material enjoyments and possessions that does not know the consequences that will follow him from enjoying them. This is ignorance, and he does not know it. That is why he keeps running after material enjoyments and possessions. He falls into this vicious circle, chasing after more and more material enjoyments and possessions. Therefore, 3 things make a person fall away from the path of God: desire for material enjoyments, desire for possessions, and ignorance. When ignorance turns into wisdom, and one finds out that the material enjoyments he was running after and all the possessions he was trying to grab are temporary, and that Bhogana Bhukta Vayameva Bhukta, the material enjoyments do not get finished, I get finished, then his hold onto material enjoyments releases. When his hold releases, then the desire for possessions automatically goes away, because if you did not need material enjoyments, then you would also not need the source for material enjoyments. What happened in ancient times was that when a woman became a widow, then she would automatically give up the colourful clothes she used to wear because she no longer had a need for them. This is because the person for whom she was wearing the clothes is no longer in the world. This is the feeling she had inside her. The fact that society later put pressure on women not to wear these clothes is a different thing. But this was the feeling inside these women, that they were wearing beautiful clothes for their husbands, and if the husbands are no longer there, then she would not want to wear these colourful clothes and would therefore give them away. When the desire for material pleasures goes away, then the desire for possessions automatically goes away. While there was a wish to wear these colourful clothes, then there was a wish to buy these colourful clothes. She would keep collecting these possessions. When wisdom comes, then the desire for material pleasures goes away, and because the desire for material pleasures goes away, the desire for possessions also automatically goes away. When this happens, then the person strives for perfection. This is one road. A human being should also understand clearly that the truth and substance of the Supreme Soul is not born from karmas. Understand this correctly. I want to repeat this twice because I know this from experience. A human being should understand clearly that the truth of the Supreme Soul is not born from karmas and actions. The reason why a human being is not striving for perfection is that because he is in the material world, and all the pleasures in the material world are born from karmas. The truth of the Supreme Soul is not born from karmas. This means that the Supreme Soul was not created from karmas. Material pleasures are born from karmas, and whatever item is born from karmas has been created, and because it has been created, this means what? it can be destroyed. The Supreme Soul was never created, and therefore he can never be destroyed. Therefore, the Supreme Soul is not born from karmas. Secondly, that which is born from karmas is within the limits of place and time. Therefore, it is either far away or in the future. That is what pleasures born of karmas are like. The Supreme Soul is not far away and not in the future. This is because the Supreme Soul is not born of karmas. We saw earlier in this chapter that the Supreme Soul is omnipresent and omnipotent. The Supreme Soul is here, now, in you and yours. The Supreme Soul is here, right now, in you, and he is yours. 4 things. Therefore, the Supreme Soul is not far away in the future. When this becomes clear, then the human being's faith increases and a human being begins striving for perfection. The reason why we do not strive for perfection is because we have an ignorance where we think about where God can be, or where we think whether that God is sitting somewhere up in heaven in a big chair creating human beings out of clay. The person thinks that God is far away. God is not far away, he is right here. There is a very beautiful quote from Swami Vivekananda that Guruji has liked since his childhood. Swami Vivekananda had gone abroad and was giving a discourse at a college in America. He attained fame and people started talking that a sannyasi, a person of renunciation from India, had come to talk about God. He was going to this college. There was an intellectual at the school who wrote the words "God is nowhere" on the board before Swami Vivekananda entered the room. Imagine if a person such as Swami Vivekananda is about to come and give a discourse and it's already written on the board that God is nowhere. Swami Vivekananda entered into the room and read what was on the board. He was very intelligent and very sharp. He began the discourse by saying that my friend has wrote something on the board and has made my work very successful because the very thing that I wish to tell you about is written on this blackboard. The attendees found this strange and wondered why he would be talking about God being nowhere. Swami Vivekananda said that my friend has rushed, he was going to write, and so he didn't spit up the last word. Swami Vivekananda picked up the book in his hand and amended the wording, so instead of nowhere, it read now here. Nowhere split into now here. The board now read, God is now here. Look at his sharpness. God is here at present and God is here in this place. When a human being understands this, then his faith increases by itself and such a person strives for perfection. Shri Krishna also says in this verse that of all who strive for perfection and succeed, barely one knows him in truth. Tattvaha is the word used, the last word in this verse. Knowing God in truth means knowing about God's good qualities. These are corporeal, incorporeal, personal, and impersonal. Corporeal, incorporeal, personal, and impersonal. Not only this, but the Panchatam of what are the 5 principal deities that we must have in any shrine or in any temple? What are they? Go on, name the deities. Go on, any gods. Any form of Vishnu, be it Rama, Krishna. Ganesh, yeah, right in front of you. In fact, inside you. Shiva, yes, Hanuman is a form of Shiva. Go on. So you've named 3. What festival just came up recently? Yes, Shakti, and one more. What time of the day it is right now? What time of the day is it right now? What's the opposite of this time of day? No, it's night time now. What's it? Sun, yeah, Surya. So the 5 deities you must have in any shrine and in any temple are Shiva, Shakti, the goddess, Ganesh, Surya, the sun god, and a form of Vishnu, be it Ram, Krishna. When this Panchatam is manifest in any form at any time, then one can attain this Panchatam, the 5 forms collectively, and without doubt one can experience their qualities. Then only then can one know God in truth. Tattvaha. Such a person does not recognize God by name or form, but by truth. Shri Krishna says in the Gita, Sambhavami yuge yuge. I come into being from time to time. He comes into being from time to time, and every time when he comes in a different form. God has come as Varava Avatar, the incarnation of a bull, Matsya, the incarnation of a fish, Gurma, the form of a tortoise, Narsi, the form of half man, half lion, and many other different forms. All these forms are so different A fish is so different from a tortoise, and a tortoise is so different from a boar, but God comes in many different forms, and he has also come as Sri Ram and Sri Krishna. The formless inside all of these forms can only be seen by one who knows God in truth. Only such a person attains ultimate success, capital U, capital S. Secondly, the reason why human beings do not strive for perfection is because the mind of human beings is a very negative mind. Human beings keep looking for that which they cannot find and forget that which they have found. The human being does not walk towards the Supreme Soul because God is too much around us. This wonderful story I want to share with you all. There was a stream flowing and two friends were talking while they were dipping their feet in the stream. These two friends were about 12 or 13 years old. One of these friends said that the other friend that day his teacher taught him something new. The second friend asked him what his teacher taught him. The first friend said that his teacher told him that life is not possible without water. As soon as he said that life is not possible without water, the small fish in the stream heard this, and the fish thought that human beings are so much above fish, and that fishes are so small, so that if a human being is saying that life is not possible without water, then this must be true. The fish went to its mother and told her he's heard about life not being possible without water, and this fish asked its mother what water is. This is because fish do not know what water is. The mother told its child that it doesn't know what water is. The mother got a group of 7 or 8 fishes together and asked the elders amongst this group of fish what the water is, because the child has heard today that life is not possible without water. This group of 7 or 8 fishes, they do not know, but they heard that there are bigger and more wise fish in the sea, and these fish are able to give her child wisdom. The mother asked what the sea was because she has never before gone to the sea. This group of 7 or 8 fishes said that they know what the sea is because they have heard that when one follows the current of the river, then one is able to reach the sea. Therefore, these 2 fishes followed the current of the stream into the river and then stayed with the current of the river in order to reach the sea. At the beginning, they did not like it because the water from the stream and the river is sweet, whereas the water from the sea is salty. Their bodies therefore had difficulties and pains. They could not take oxygen from the sea like they could from the stream and the river. Initially, they had a lot of difficulties, but they adjusted because they had this curiosity inside themselves. They met with the big fish of the sea and bowed down to the big fish, paid obeisances to him. These small fishes admired the big fishes and said that they had heard about them and had never seen fish like them before. The small fishes said that they had come with a question. The big fishes asked what the question was. The child small fish said that it was once swimming around its stream and it heard from human beings that there is no life without water. The child small fish asked the big fish what this water was because the child small fish does not know anything about water. The big fishes began explaining what water is and said, "How could you know what water is? Because you cannot live without water. Everything of yours comes from water. Water is yatra, tatra, sarvatra, here, there and everywhere. Your birth took place in water, you grew up in water and you are living in water, and in the end you will die in water. You cannot get out of this water." The small fish said to the big fish that it doesn't understand this philosophy of the big fish and said that it doesn't understand what this yatra, tatra, vatra means. The small fish said that it doesn't understand all this big talk and just wishes to understand what water is. There was an experienced and wise big fish amongst this group of big fishes, and the experienced big fish said that the small fish will not understand through words and they should give an experience. The experienced big fish told the small fish to stay with waves that it could see and that the waves would take it towards the shore. The experienced big fish said that as soon as the shore comes up, then the small fish should make a small jump and it will realize what water is. The small fish went with the waves of the sea towards the shore, and when the shore came, then the small fish made a small jump. When it jumped, the wave had gone back into the sea, and the small fish did not land in the water, it landed on the shore. The small fish thought that everything was finished. Its life was over, and thought that it would not be able to go back into the sea. It had gone to seek the answer to its question, but as it landed on the shore, then these thoughts came into its mind. Thereafter, another wave came, and as soon as the water of the wave touched the fish, then one moment, the small fish realized what water was. Life is not possible without water. It realized, and she experienced it at that very moment. The small fish was very lucky because it could understand that from which it was born, that in which it lived, and that which it died what it was. Human beings are not so lucky as this fish because God is too much around us. We are born inside God, we got up inside God, and there is a total gigantic ocean of Brahman consciousness all around us, and we cannot get out of it even for a moment. The mind and nature of human beings are such that they only understand what is not, can only understand what is not there, and they cannot understand what is there. How can we say that God is not present with us? There is no place and no time when the Supreme Soul is not there. We are slaves to our nature. We are tied by this unlimited nature, and therefore we cannot understand the Supreme Soul. Not only can we not attain the Supreme Soul, but we do not try to search for the Supreme Soul. What attitude do we need? The fish living in water goes in search for water in the same way the human being living in Brahman consciousness goes in search of Brahman. There are difficulties. When the fish came out from the river into the sea, then they felt the difficulties and the pains. They could not get much oxygen. In the same way, when a human being goes from the river of the material world into the sea of spirituality, then a human being finds that he's become too comfortable with the sweet water of the material world and has become habitualized with it. There is saltiness at the beginning in the sea of spirituality. Shri Krishna will say in the 37th verse of the 18th chapter of the Gita, Yadbagre Shamiva Praninem Mrityopanam. This path will be like poison at the beginning, but like nectar at the end. One must be prepared to handle the difficulties at the beginning. When one attains Brahman, then this experience is more than worth it. Secondly, a person gets unhappy with what he has already acquired. This is the nature of the human mind. When a person acquires something, then he forgets about it. Thinkers have given us a very nice example. A man was in love with a woman for 5 to 7 years. They're getting married in a church and they're putting rings on each other, but at that time the groom was very upset. The priest who was getting them married asked the groom that this is one of the greatest moments in his life, so why is he sad? The priest asked the groom why he was frowning. The groom told the priest that he does not understand why he's sad, but maybe it feels like the moment he had been waiting for 5 to 7 years has now come. The groom said that he was having so many expectations of this moment for years, but now when this woman became his, he has become sad. This is because that waiting has gone, that charm has gone, and this is what the mind is like. The negative mind of a human being should become positive, and God is not negative, God is positive. When the whole mind becomes positive, then one attains the Supreme Soul. If you try to search for God in a list of what is not there, then you will not find God. But if you try to search for God in a list of what is there, then you will find God. This is because you see God's grace in what is there, and if you go a bit deeper into that thing, then you will see God himself with a capital H. You need a positive attitude. Shri Krishna has shown this throughout his whole own life. If you look at Shri Krishna's whole life, then you will see that he had total positive attitude. Shri Krishna has never said that it is not there ever in his life, and that is why there have never been tears in the eyes of Shri Krishna ever in his life. When God is there, then he is there in his totality, and when he is not there, then he is not there at all. Many people ask the question that Shri Krishna had a lot of love for the gopis, but when Shri Krishna went from Vraj to Mathura, then the gopis cried so much. But why did Shri Krishna not cry? Not only did Shri Krishna not cry, but he did not come back to Vraj ever again in his whole life. One person wrote a question to Guruji asking that he should have at least gone back for 3/4 of an hour. Guruji told him that if he had not come back for 3/4 for an hour, then he could not even come back for half an hour. And if he came back for half an hour, then people would ask why he had not come back for 1 whole hour. Vraj to Mathura is only 5 to 7 miles and no more. Shri Krishna should complete in his business in Vraj every day and go back and forth. We do not all the time go from, let's say, central London to Finchley and Finchley to central London. That if we can do this, but why could not God do this from Vraj to Mathura? The legislature and executive is in Mathura, and Shri Krishna could come to Vraj to rest. No, where God is, he is there in his entirety, and when he is not there, then he is not there at all. This is a positive attitude. What we have is that we're not happy with what we've got, but we keep looking for things that go away from us. Therefore, we are always looking at what we had in the past and what we may get in the future, and as a result, we have no attention towards what we have in the present, and we get no happiness from what we have in the present. This is where our sorrow comes from. And it is not as if the Supreme Soul was there in the past or that he will come in the future. The Supreme Soul is here in the present. He is here now, but our attention is not in the present. As a result, we fall short of becoming one with the Supreme Soul. If we are looking to London but talking to Tokyo, then you are not able to see the thing in front of you. This is what our attention is like. That is why we fall short from becoming one with the Supreme Soul. In the 4th and 5th verse of this chapter, Shri Krishna explains metaphysics and shows us his totality. Next verse. 40 minutes.